So disclosure is all around you right now. And yes, there are more people channeling because it's soft disclosure. Because if you had an ET standing in front of you right now that looked nothing like you, most of you would be in the fetal position on the ground.
What happens when we die? Where do we go? Hello and welcome to the Happy Insights podcast. My name is Happy Ali. And if you know how excited I was on the inside right now, you would be just as excited with me. This interview that we're having today with one of my favorite people has been in the making for about 3 or 4 years. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest today, Wendy Kennedy. Wendy is an intuitive, an empath, and channel who's been working with beings from other realms and dimensions for 3 decades now. She's incredibly gifted and has been a beacon of light in a world that sometimes does feel dark. And she began channeling in 1995, first connecting with her angelic guides and later becoming reacquainted with the ninth dimensional Pleiadian Collective. And Wendy also works with beings from Sirius, Lyra, Arcturus, and much more. You might know her from the documentary Tuning In. And she also co-authored her book, The Great Human Potential, Walking in One's Own Light. So welcome, Wendy. I hope I did a good job introducing you.
You did a fabulous job. Thank you, Happy. I am thrilled to finally be able to sit down and join you. So thank you for having me.
Of course. And I think that my audience is going to really love every moment of today's show. I always say there's five people that I really respect and admire in the channeling world, and your name's always right there. And it was in my book, it's in my world, it's in my conversations, because there's so many people that claim to channel that I don't believe. So when you speak, even when you do light language, like I am moved. And you're one of the people that actually turned me on to light language. I think I was telling you that when I saw you last time. And my audience will find out what that is later. So let me ask you a really quick question. Is it true that you've been doing this for 30 years? It says 1995.
And that's right. Actually, I think I started in 94. I think this is 31 years now. So that's crazy. I never saw this, as my path early on, but I just kept following my guidance, and here I am.
What's your purpose? What do you think your purpose is in this world? Like, did you know your purpose? I guess you say you didn't, but what is your purpose now?
I think it's really to empower people to remember their true divine essence. And that's really the message of my guides. It's trying to help people to understand how reality works and then how to empower yourself to create your own reality now that you have the understanding of how reality works. So, I think that's the thing that brings me the greatest joy is to see people be able to do things on their own, to trust in themselves, because I think we're so socially conditioned that we're afraid to fail, we're afraid to try things. But if we don't ever try things, then, we don't know what works, we don't know what doesn't work. And so we kind of hide our light and we don't stand on our power. So it's having the courage to explore and try things that may not be mainstream.
Well, you're definitely not mainstream. I can tell you that. And I love that.
Yeah.
Most people know what channeling is if they're tuning in, but can you tell me how it is that you do communicate with other dimensional beings? How does it work energetically?
Well, everything is energy, everything vibrates, everything has a specific frequency. So it's just like a radio station where you kind of tune the dial to the station that you want, you turn the volume up, and then you can hear the music that's playing or the talk show, the podcast. So it's the same thing. I am just simply attuning my energy to a higher frequency. I'm opened to that. The volume is up so I can hear it. Whether I want to go and look at the Akashic records, or I want to talk with the Pleiadians in the ninth dimension, or some of my Syrian friends in the fifth dimension, those are slightly different frequencies. And so I will kind of shift and attune myself to those those energies. And everybody has the ability to do this. It's actually very abnormal not to be doing this because it is our innate gift, it's our innate ability. But again, it's one of those things that we've been conditioned to kind of shut down. So, the easiest way for anybody to tap into that is to go into their heart centered space, to think of something that makes you smile, because that's the space that opens you up to be able to receive these higher vibrational signals. When you're in your ego mind, in your fear programs of lack, limitation, and separation, you can't access that. Your vibration is too low. So the moment you go into the heart-centered space, you have access to all of that.
What is the technique? How do you do that? How do you get into the heart-centered energy, especially when the world is just kind of not necessarily going your way?
So this is something that I think absolutely every single time that I have channeled publicly, the guides will talk about it because it's just that important. And it's something that's so simple, we dismiss it. We think, well, what could that possibly do? But it does everything. Because when we're in this space, and I'll talk about how we get there in just a second, but when we're in this space, we can stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's what allows us to the body to repair and digest, as opposed to the fight or flight system, the sympathetic nervous system, where we're stressed out, we're producing completely different chemicals. So when we go back to that heart-centered space, not only do we have access to the full flow of source energy, but we allow our body to receive it and to utilize it so we have better health and better vitality. So when things are so crazy in the world right now, this is something that is really important that we learn how to do and we practice it over and over and over again. It's not something that you just do one and you're done. You'll go into that space, you'll drop out. You'll go into that space and you'll drop out. And hopefully, every time you go into it, you stay there a little longer, you go to a higher frequency. And then every time you drop out, hopefully, you recognize it faster and you don't stay there as long and you don't drop out as far. So, this is about repetition. It's about mastery of being conscious of where you're at in any given moment. Now, the guides say, you can do meditation, and how you choose to meditate can be for different reasons. It can achieve different results. You might meditate to bring in energy, to allow more energy to flow, or you might be trying to calm the body. There are lots of different things that you can do for meditation. If you're somebody who's very mind oriented, meditation might be really difficult for you. And they've got some tools for that. There are things that they recommend, just being creative for the sake of being creative, that will help you to come back to that heart centered space. Because when you're creative, you're in the heart. When you're creating not for an outcome, but just to explore the moment, then you're present and you're in the heart. And if you're somebody who's very mind oriented, that will help you so that when you go to do something like meditation, it'll be just a little bit easier for you. But what they say is the easiest thing to do is to simply think of something that makes you smile. And that's the fastest way for us to get into the heart centered space. So, when most of us find that image, we're going to feel expanded, uplifted, joyous, tingly, warm. We may be smiling. And baby animals are great for that. They say preferably not a pet, because your pet may have just done something that you're not really happy with, like they might have just chewed on your favorite pair of shoes. And that might be happening, that programming at the subconscious level. Same thing with loved ones. If you're thinking of a loved one, there may be some programs running in the background about that person. So, you can get there for a moment and then the programs kick in. But baby animals are great. Nature, places that you love to be, or just love to look at. If there's an image of a place that just seems serene and beautiful to you, that lights you up, then that's an image that you can use. But that's the fastest way to get there.
I know you have channeling classes, so if people are more interested, they can always go to your website, which is in the description below. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe. But now, without further ado, would you mind bringing in your friends and we can ask some questions?
Sure. First and foremost, a group of about 2,500 beings of light from the Pleiades star system come in. They're ninth dimensional beings, and I call them the ninth dimensional Pleiadian Collective, or the Ps for short. And rather than incarnating to a planet the way that we do, they align with the mission or the blueprint of a stellar body. And in their case, it's Alcyone in the Pleiades star system. That's the central sun there, and it's a repository of knowledge and information. And so they align with the blueprint of that library. So they are record keepers, they're keepers of frequency. And then I know we're going to do a language of light activation. The guides will probably talk about that when we get to that point. But there are other beings who will also come in and kind of braid their energy sometimes with the Pleiadians. When they do that, they are sharing knowledge and information. You'll definitely feel that when we do the language of light portion. But the P's always take point. And when I first started channeling, I was working with different beings, my angelics, the Arcturans, and they were waiting for me to channel verbally because I was doing automatic writing. And once I did that, they came forward because they actually work with tone and sound, which is why their dialect is different than my own. It's not really any one particular dialect. Um, it's open vowels that they can modulate the frequency. So, in addition to getting the information, it's as if you're getting a healing because they are helping you to find frequencies within your own field and you can move your energy to those higher resonances. All right, so I'll get out of the way and let them come through.
I'm so excited.
Yes, hello, dears. This is the Ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and it is a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to connect with you. So, it is a golden time to be on your planet. It's full of new potential, new opportunities. And we know right now, with the state of the world, things in a state of shall we say, disrepair, that it might not always feel that way, but you are moving through a sector of space that is rich with photonic energy, light particles, that is meant to support you, meant to allow new ideas, new information to be available to you in an easier way than, say, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago. It's just much easier for you to access higher frequencies now than ever. But it just requires you to make the decision to connect with yourself, to connect with your heart, and to keep coming back to a state of awareness of where you're vibrating again and again and again. If you do that and you set intentions as to the frequencies you wish to explore and check in to see whether you're in alignment with those frequencies or not, as you do that, you will start to step more into your power and you will find that life flows easier and you're able to create in faster ways and in bigger ways than you ever dreamed possible. All
Thank you
right.
for that. I'm very
Yes.
excited to have this chat with you, which you kind of jumped into my very first question, which was why do souls choose to incarnate on Earth in this dimension at this time? What's so unique about living on planet Earth right now?
It's very special. And, there are many souls who would have liked to have come, but there are only so many bodies, so to speak, to have that direct physical experience. But as you go through your life, the experiences that you have are recorded within Earth herself in her energetic field. It's recorded, and she's kind of a library of sorts, kind of like your branch library, if you will. And other beings can access the information of your experiences. So those who couldn't come here directly will kind of have a secondhand experience. Think about a sports event. You've got the players on the field and then the fans who are in the stands. So there are many fans in the stands watching what's going on here on planet Earth. But it's very, very special because Earth herself was an experiment. All right. It's a grand experiment where genetic material from thousands of worlds was donated to this experiment. And along with the genetic material comes all of the experiences of that genetic line. So, all the issues that were played out throughout your galaxy where integration wasn't possible. Integration is the release of judgment. All right, that's all it is. And as judgment was released, or an attachment or aversion to polarity, something being good, bad, right, wrong, that's when you are elevating high enough to cross a dimensional barrier. So let us back up just a little bit. This was a game of descension and reascension. So the third dimension is rather unique in that you operate under the illusion of separation. And we say illusion because it's impossible for you to be separate from anyone or anything. But you partition off your awareness of your multidimensional self so that you can operate under this sense of disconnection. And the reason for that is that as you have these experiences and you don't know what's coming the next moment, it makes the experience of the moment very different. So think about you watching a movie. If you've already seen the trailer that shows all the scary parts or the adventuresome, or they've revealed something that's going to happen, as you're watching it, you don't have the same emotional response as if you had no idea whatsoever. And so that's what it's like down here in 3D. It also gives you an opportunity, by having this extreme of duality, to have a greater understanding of the light, of the whole, of source itself. So dark is simply the absence of light, an experience that doesn't hold quite as much light in it, but it is still part of source energy. You cannot have one without the other. And so, where you're going here, as you stop trying to make yourself want to be separate from one of the polarities, because even the dark wants to make itself separate from the light, saying, "Oh, that light is so goody goody. I can't thrive that way." So there's judgment on both polarities of the other. As you stop judging and you come back into an awareness of both sides being two sides of the same coin, then you elevate in frequency. From the fifth dimension up, you have an awareness of this as your divine nature, that you are a spark of the divine. You are whole, you are connected to everyone and everything. But in any moment, you can consciously project yourself as an individuated consciousness, or you can perceive yourself as the whole. Here, you have an idea that that's true, but you don't live from that space. You think, all right, well, the working theory here is that I'm part of source energy, but most of you haven't embodied that truth. There are some who have gone through a near-death experience and brought that sensation back with them, who can embody it here, or they have a major revelation, but very, very, very few of you are holding that as a deeply rooted, embodied sensation. Now, there are more of you having these awarenesses, and you can have out-of-body experiences, you can have memories that surface, and you have in that instant a deep awareness, but oftentimes you will go back into your slumber, so to speak. You'll forget that. And then you might tap into it again and you'll say, oh, this frequency, I remember this. And so it takes practice for you to keep coming around to this awareness. All right. And this is what you're doing. This is a game of mastery here in the 3D. So you are learning how to master maintaining this perspective of non-duality, so to speak. You have an awareness of both, but you are incorporating both of them into wholeness. This is where your Holy Trinity comes from in all the ancient traditions. You have both polarities and the center point. And so this is where you're going to. This is what you're working on. And Earth is quite special for that reason, because you're going down into the lower depths of 3D. You're descending, and then you're seeing if you can come back out of it into the higher realms. That was the setup of the game. And then you had all this genetic material with lots of variations. Earth is the planet of emotion. If you want to learn about emotions, you come to planet Earth. You have a wide range because you've got all of the experiences of this genetic material. And combined, this allows you to find lots of different ways, nuances to release judgment so that you can go up in frequency. Also, you're integrating many, 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 many past lifetimes where integration didn't happen, where you tried, but it just didn't work out. Atlantis is a good example. And this particular point is the nexus point where a lot of the integration is going to happen, in part because you are moving through the sector of space that's rich with photonic energy. There is a band of photonic energy. Think about it like a start and finish line for a track for a race, except you're spiraling up, but you're crossing the plane of this this cycle, this track. And as you cross it, it helps you to go through an integration process and it gives you new energy, fresh energy to start a new cycle with as well. And because you've got this extra energy, it just makes things much, much easier. We know right now it may not feel that way, but you have a lot of support energetically to help you to release some of these things you've been holding on to for a very, very long time. So that's our long-winded answer about why it's so special to be here.
So, what are the souls gaining from descending and reascending? I understand what we're gaining from it, but did we even need to do this? Why did they decide to descend and reascend?
Because it was fun. It's a game. Because you already know all that is, because you are an aspect of source. So why do you like to play sports? Why do you like to play games? Because they're fun. And so you all will set up games, all right, dimensional systems, if you will. Different systems will have different blueprints of things to kind of work on and explore. And this is no different. All right. All the things that you do here, you do in the higher dimensional ranges as well. So, all the things that you love to explore, you like to play with games, you like to be creative, you like to connect and play with your friends. Same thing in the higher realms.
So it's like as above, so below. It's that same philosophy.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So one of the biggest games I guess we play here is manifestation, to learn how to create in a tangible way. What, and I hear you talking about manifestation, tuning into certain frequencies, and I'm a master manifester myself. But what do you think most people get wrong from the concept of manifestation? Where do you think people are misunderstanding the concept?
There's a lot. But, the way that you used to think about manifestation, the way that it was taught to you all, it's not going to work in the same way in the next few years because you're moving into new systems for which you do not have a visual. So a lot of times people are looking for a visual and they get very disappointed when that visual image doesn't show up in the way that they think it should. And that's why we teach it in a slightly different way in terms of paying attention to the frequency over form. So as you start to learn what frequency feels like as you are holding it, you can recognize it when it's outside of you and it's showing up in front of you. Because it's like asking for a gift and you're focused on the wrapping of the box as opposed to the gift in the box. And if you're working with frequency, you can recognize that the gift is in the box. You don't care what the wrapping is because really what you want is inside. And you can also wait a very long time to manifest in that way when you are obsessed with the visual. You will miss the many other opportunities to have that vibrational experience because you're obsessed with what the outside looks like. Also, one of the problems we see with manifestation is that you think that what is outside of you determines how you feel. And you're missing the first step in the process of manifestation, and that is paying attention to how you are feeling, the frequencies that you want to hold and emanate first. And the outer world is a reflection of that and reinforces the energy that you've already been holding. So you're kind of missing the internal step first, because you can think about it in terms of feminine and masculine. You've got several levels of it. You've got the feminine being the internal and the masculine being the external. But even within the internal, there is a feminine expression and a masculine expression of energy. So in some ways, it is reacquainting yourselves with the divine feminine by going inside and really allowing yourself to access the heart. Some think that it's just a mental exercise, and it's not. It's a full body, full energetic exercise. And you are 100% of the time creating your reality. And there are a lot of people who don't like that when we say that, because they say, well, look at the awful things that happen in this world. And to that, we say, that you are a divine being of light having this physical experience. And there are things that at the ego level, you cannot understand why the soul would choose that. The soul may choose things that are darker and harder because it may be of service to the whole. There may be a skill, gift, or ability that they will learn, or a way that it will skew their reality that allows them to have a particular vibrational experience that they wanted to have before they incarnated. It is not that somebody has done something quote unquote wrong. There are many levels and layers to why you create the things that you create that, again, at the ego level, you cannot see. But when you go into the heart center, you can see the gifts in all of your creations, even the things that were hard and that were challenging. It may be that it just simply showed you there was more light available to you if you so chose it. All right. If you choose to have it, it's there. And it may be that you were not expressing the highest light. So, oh, look, there's another option. When you express, some of the lower resonances, this is the result. All right, now you have that awareness. You don't have to stay in that frequency. You can go attune yourself to higher resonances by imagining them. What would it feel like to explore peace, calm, happiness, joy, abundance, connection, whatever it is that you want? As you imagine that, you start to run that energy. It gets pulsed out and then it gets reflected back as your reality. If you are not seeing what you quote unquote think you want as the reality reflected back, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything wrong. This is the other place that people struggle. Or it may be that what you're asking for is of a very high vibrational nature and you cannot sustain that frequency. So there are several intermediate steps that you need to experience, skills that you might need to master, or there may be some things that you need to let go of. So the universe brings you opportunities. Sometimes they may not be the most comfortable, because if you've been dragging it around for a while, then it tends to be a little bigger, a little more drama to get your attention. But it may be something that you need to let go of so that you can elevate your frequency. Like attracts like. So you have to be in a matching resonance with the things that you want energetically to experience in the outer world. You can't perceive them otherwise. But if you are holding on to all the lower stuff and that's emanating out at the subconscious level, the universe says, well, you're asking for this high vibrational stuff. You can't sustain that frequency. There's all this lower stuff. So let's bring a reflection of the lower stuff to bring you back into your awareness of yourself as a whole divine being of light. And you can release those judgments and come up to the level to meet what you're asking for. All right?
Yeah, that was a really good answer. And it kind of ties into the a question somebody asked. And the question was, why do bad things happen to good people? And it seems like good things happen to bad people.
Well, just like what we said, it's not always viewable at the ego level why things transpire. So, and it's also perspective, because you might be looking at somebody else's life and maybe they came in with a birth defect, or they've had a really tough time, and you might be judging that as being really bad. That person may not see themselves that way or perceive that their life has been hard in any way. All right. It's your external judgment. And they may have chosen that at the soul level. Some souls may choose some sort of physical limitation because they may have had other lifetimes where they were obsessed with beauty. And the life that they needed to explore this time was a life of inner beauty. And to discover as they reflected or as they emanated that inner beauty, it was reflected in the outer world that others would see that inner beauty. And no matter what was happening with the physical body, they saw them as being immensely beautiful. Where in those other lifetimes, they did everything they could to make themselves physically look beautiful, but they were quote unquote ugly on the inside because they were unhappy and hadn't learned to tap into their own inner light and joy. So at the ego level, you may not be able to perceive that, but as you go into the heart-centered space and you start asking those questions, what's the gift? What's the benefit of having this experience? You'll start to receive answers as to why you would have chosen such a thing. And when you understand that, it's quite liberating for you all. You understand the purpose, and you can find a sense of empowerment by having that knowledge, that information, and you can move forward.
I see. That makes perfect sense. Because I've had a lot of bad stuff happen to me, and I can't imagine having the life that I have now if it wasn't for all that bad things that happen. It was kind of prepped me for what I am experiencing now, and I'm so grateful to live the life that I am living right now. So that clicked with me big time. Um, I'm going to just kind of keep going back to the questions that people ask. A lot of people right now are talking about quantum leaps and jumping timelines to where they can have a whole new reality. And I'm just curious what your take is on the idea of quantum leaps and huge timeline jumping.
Yes, well, we could talk hours about this. So we kind of have to talk about understanding the nature of time. Time is just a frequency, it's a marker for an experience. That's all time is. So we want you to envision a giant sphere, which is every experience imaginable, and then some. It's in it, on the surface of the sphere, are infinite number of dots, and every dot is a now moment. Every now moment is built upon a base frequency of the collective reality, the stories that the collective says is the reality of the situation. You had World War One, you had World War Two, and then your personal stories. What you tell yourself is your reality. Oh, when I was 15, this happened. When I was 21, this happened. And that creates the base frequency for your now moment. The energies that you hold in this resonance as well, in this now moment, determine what you can perceive as your external reality and the circumstances. Now, most of you go moment to moment to moment by really choosing now moments that are relatively similar in the base frequency. But occasionally, you will make a radical shift in the perception that you're holding, the frequency that you're holding, that will allow you to, say, go to the opposite side of the sphere, where the base frequency may be radically different. This you see in terms of people who may have gone through a near death experience. They've connected with higher realms and they brought that energy and that awareness back and they're holding it in their consciousness. This is radically different than where they may have been an hour before that. All right, or even a moment before that. And because the base frequency, your energetic state is so different, it creates a different physical structure as well. The body is created out of the energetic template. So when the belief system was so radically altered, the body starts immediately aligning to be a representative of that energy. This is where miraculous healings happen. So this is the easiest place for you to see that, where something radically goes into remission. And it's because the base frequency changed. Now, timelines don't really exist. You string now moments together to give yourself the illusion of a timeline. And you may be sharing a base frequency with us right now, where Wendy is channeling. You're hearing the information. But then 2 months from now, you might be holding a base frequency that is very different than the one, say, Wendy's holding. And so your versions of reality may be very different as you move on. So it's not that you're on a singular timeline, but you are operating under this illusion of time, which again, it doesn't really exist. The fifth dimensional level is one where past, present, and future are one. And you know this, and you can go to any point in time. Again, it's just a marker for a frequency. You can find the frequency, and you will go to the time that represents that. Time was a construct of 3D so that you didn't continually go through the death cycle. What do we mean by that? If you kept having a thought and it was a negative one, if you were immediately manifesting stuff, you'd keep dying and you'd have to come back down. But here, as you're exploring the lower resonances, things take time so that to manifest, so that as you hold that lower thought, you can adjust your frequency so that you are no longer a match for that accident or that limiting belief that you're holding, so that you do not go through that death cycle again and again and again so quickly. So this was part of the construct of the game. But you all have the ability to move yourselves anywhere that you want to go. Now, having said that, we know many of you are struggling right now because you want to be in a utopia. You want to be someplace that is beautiful and light, and you are really wanting the rest of the collective to get it together. And we caution you about holding this perspective. It is important that you work on yourself and that you hold the highest resonance possible and that you hold the highest vision for the collective, but you're not attached to where the collective is. And that's vastly different than those of you that feel like you're suffering because the collective hasn't gotten themselves together. You want to be on a timeline where it's going to be light and airy. But it doesn't really matter what's happening with the collective in terms of your ability to access peace, joy, happiness, love, abundance, all those wonderful feelings and experiences that you want to have. You can thrive and experience joy in the midst of the collective chaos. And sometimes this is why, at the soul level, you are on the now moment that you are on, where the collective is struggling. You are there to be a way shower. You are there to remind the collective that there is another option. There's more light that's available. You will be on a now moment that allows you to be of the greatest service and to have the greatest amount of soul growth possible. Those are not two mutually exclusive things. So if you find that the collective isn't getting it, that doesn't mean that you have to suffer. And you can still have those wonderful things we talked about. And that will liberate you so that you don't feel tied to that heavier version of reality. But as you are living in this more elevated space and you are emanating the energies of compassion and grace and love and joy and peace and calm, that's what you're going to see reflected back to you in your personal reality, the people that you encounter, the things that you experience. And if for some reason you are in an experience that is of a lower vibrational nature, that means you're there to be a way shower. Hold your light. All right. That is also your greatest protection,
And
your higher resonances.
and also our greatest power, I would say,
Yes.
comes from that the darkness, because I tend to live in my own bubble, and people often try to bring me to what they consider reality, and I like my reality. So I say here, if you like my reality, come to my reality, but I'm not coming there. So thank you for that. That was a really wonderful answer. I also, another thing that I thought about people that want to jump timelines, it's almost like they don't want to go through the transformation process. Didn't we come here and be incarnated so we can become more and transform and learn more and gain muscles? Or, I always feel like they want to skip ahead.
Well, they want to avoid something. So why do you want to be on a different now moment? Why do you want to be on a different timeline? What is it that you are seeking to avoid? What pain point are you seeking to avoid? And when you learn that about yourself, when you recognize that about yourself, that's the point that needs to be healed. That's where you're holding judgment. That's where you're holding on to pain. And that's what you need to let go of. Because honestly, when you get to a higher vibrational level, you don't really care because you are constantly in joy, regardless of what is going on around you. You can bring joy to the moment wherever you are.
That's beautiful. All right, so now I'm going to jump to a different question. A lot of people on this earth, they seek connection and love. And that seems to be something that most people resonate with. And when it comes to manifestation, I know a lot of people who wish they had a twin flame or a divine counterpart, because I know twin flames could mean something else. Is it possible that someone's destined to be single their entire life? And regardless of how much they do all the manifestation work and all whatever it is, and feeling loved and feeling like they're in a relationship and how that frequency feels like they'll be destined to be single, for example?
We don't, it would be exceptionally rare. And, if that is the case, it's more likely that they would be in more of a monastic life. But for most people, it's just an opportunity to go through healing and to learn to love yourself and to heal yourself. This is kind of an interesting time, as we said, in terms of it being a nexus point. And we want you to think about 50 years ago, 100 years ago. People didn't travel in the same way. They didn't have the ability to communicate in the same way. So people were in small communities and they didn't venture out very far. So they didn't have the opportunity to meet all these different people. And right now, where you're at, you have the ability to encounter a lot of different people. And each time you encounter someone, you are leveling up, you're learning something about yourself. So, this particular lifetime, many of you chose to have lots of short term relationships so that you could learn very quickly about yourself and move on. You would pick people who you maybe had two or three points in common that you wanted to work things out with, and then you move in separate directions. The social conditioning that you have had has been very detrimental on the psyche. That the value, especially for women, is that you only have value if you are a wife and mother. You have very little value otherwise. And it is so ingrained in the collective consciousness. And then for men, there is also, not to the same extent, but there is a lot of self esteem that gets tied into having the right wife, the right family. But we would say for women, it is far a deeper wound, so to speak. But you're learning to love yourself first and foremost. And then all relationships will be a reflection of the one that you have with source energy. All right. The energy that you run between yourself and source, self-love, self-appreciation, self-gratitude. And then all relationships will be a reflection of that. So the reflections that you're getting in these relationships that aren't working, they're just helping you to heal. They're showing you what perhaps you want. Sometimes you get something you don't want to recognize, ooh, I want this instead. And sometimes it's so that you can have an awareness of a limiting belief that you've been holding about yourself. And there's greater love, greater expansion that is available to you. And as you go through this process, you will start to call more and more people to you that will be a mirror for that. But there's so much that is happening right now in terms of development of the individual. That's why some of you find that you don't call someone in for long periods of time just because you're working on you, and you're choosing to do it in another way. And you, if that is the case for you, look at what gets triggered for you around the idea of relationships and your self worth by having or not having one. And that's the wound to heal for you there.
Thank you so much. I know a lot of people will really appreciate that answer because it's kind of embedded in us that we need to have the one. And when you don't have it, there's something wrong with you or you're doing something wrong, and people start beating themselves up for doing something wrong, especially the ones who truly believe that they're creator of their own reality. And then now they're not able to create that love in their lives.
And then it goes back to what we were saying before. Well, if that thing that you want isn't showing up, pay attention to what is showing up because that's what needs to be healed in order for you to attain a match for the vibration that you're asking for.
That's huge. Um, I'm going to kind of switch gears now because we talked about kind of the personal experience of the individual and where they are at. Now, I want to kind of talk about the planet a little bit more and our connection to other planets and other other star systems. You said earlier that the Earth experiment was basically seeded by a lot of different DNA from different star systems. When did that start, or how did that come about? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, Earth was here a very, very long time ago, and about 400,000 years ago is when some of that shifted just a little bit in terms of the modification of the DNA and everything else. That was one of the first Lemurian civilizations, one of the very high vibrational versions of the Lemurian civilizations, because the Lyrians were the first to really come and volunteered to descend in frequency to play in this game. So a lot of Lemuria was seeded from the Lyran star system. It's not the only one. The Pleiadians came, Syrians, Orions came later, but they were the first. So, with the genetic material, again, it's from thousands of worlds, the original seeding of the planet. But when you're talking about the humanoids and what you think of as humans being here, that was kind of ramped up at that point. There was new genetic material that was seeded here, additional material that was brought here as the game was initiated. And you've got seven major star systems that pull the archetypal patterns for Earth. So you've got Cassiopeia, Orion, Sirius, Lyra, Arcturus, the Pleiades, and then you've also got Andromeda, which is a sister galaxy, which um, we consider to be a part of the systems because many of the Lyrans after the Lyran War, the AI wars in that system, they went there. And so there is still the genetic connection, and they have brought their genetic material here as well to help you to heal that. The interesting thing is with that system, the setup is different. Here, where you are, most of you are doing things that are relatively similar, and that's kind of the social conditioning. Don't do anything that's too far out there. You've got to stay pretty close to the normal path here. But in that system, the expectation is that everybody does something slightly different or radically different because if somebody else has been there and done that, you can go access those records. Let's do something unique. So it's a different setup and it provides a different point of view. And that helps you to break through kind of this programming of we've got to stay on a narrow path. It helps you to expand a bit. And so as their energy and their genetic material from that system was brought here, it helps you to kind of tap into that energy.
When the genetic material is brought here and combined with ours, is it through genetic modification like science, or is it through sex?
Most of it was through science very early on. And then as you kind of came down through dissension, as you got a little lower in frequency, some of it was a mixing of DNA as some of the ETs were here. But most of it was through science.
And how much involvement have they had in extraterrestrials have had in creating our world? I mean, I know the pyramids, for example, they can't people can't figure out how they were created. What's the story behind those? Were they ETs helping us during those times, or were we just so advanced at that time?
Both, both. Um, because you're just now discovering that there were, if you're talking about Egypt, for example, that there were times on the planet where it was kind of a hub for interdimensional transportation. It was happening on this planet that ETs would come and go. And you yourselves are in essence hybrids. So you yourselves are ETs. All right. But you knew that. You knew that you were part of a broader community, an off-world community, that this was family. All right. You had genetic connections to these beings, even though, you had different perspectives, different ways of doing things. You also knew that there was a connection and you were part of a grander community. But as you came down in frequency, you lost more and more of this information with the fall of Atlantis, with the Great Flood. A lot of that knowledge and information was lost. The Atlanteans buried information. They took it out in 12 different directions with 12 different groups to teach how to rebuild society for many of these beings, many of these civilizations that survived but perhaps didn't have the high knowledge available. They took it and shared it, and they've left energetic records for you, and you're just now recovering them. You're accessing them vibrationally, energetically. Many of them had vibrational locks and keys that, as you are increasing your frequency, you can once again begin to access. So it was both. There were times on your planet, and even just a few short thousands of years ago, 3,000 years ago, you knew ETs existed. All right. But that information has been suppressed. It's been hidden, and history has kind of been rewritten to serve an agenda.
So that brings me to disclosure, I guess, and us reconnecting with our sky family, because I guess we went down and then we kind of reset in some ways. I don't know if we use the word reset, but we kind of dumbed down, and now the soul had to have a purpose for that, for the because I mean, I personally believe that the soul does run the show. Like the consciousness says, there's something to be gained from everyone forgetting everything. Is that true?
Yes. You're playing games within games within games. So there are multiple levels and layers to this. So there are ETs who are interacting with you right now, not necessarily with your best interest in mind. And, this period in the future from 2019 to 2026 is referred to as frequency wars, and you're in the middle of it. There is a war going on to control your frequencies, your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical body. And this is what you are learning how to take control of, to learn to be very conscious of the energies that you are holding and emitting in every given moment, as opposed to just simply reacting to everything around you. Those that are who are kind of trying to control and manipulate, and they're doing it to sustain power. They don't want you to know that you have the ability to change your frequency in any given moment. They don't want you to stand in your power, but they have such a great understanding of human psyche and manipulating you that it's very easy. And you're starting to see the way that they've done it over time. You're starting to see the patterns, and you're starting to wisen up and saying, there's something about this that seems off. I'm not buying into that as a truth. But this awareness comes as you start to stand in your own power, and you start to tune into your heart. You start to pay attention to your intuition. And as you do that, you have an awareness of what is a quote unquote truth that you are in alignment with or not. We say truth in quotes because truth is always colored by perspective. There are very few things that are absolute truths, and those things are universal laws. So you can have 100 people watch an event, and you'll have 100 different stories of what transpired. It's all based on your filters and your programming and what you can perceive, or the stories that you take away that are important to your experience that you're having. You'll take the bits and pieces that support the current perspective, the frequency that you hold. This is why, if you were to actually go back and to objectively view something from your past as it actually transpired, you'd say, oh, I didn't hear that person say this to me at all. I took it in a completely different way. Or you'll say, oh, I was in a very defensive posture right there. I could have been a lot more compassionate in that moment. There are lots of things that you can't always see. What you see is based on the frequencies that you hold. They're filters for your reality.
So I just want to go back to the frequency wars.
Yes.
When I think about control, I think about the governments and how the world feels like it's in chaos. And I feel like I'm the frequency wars there for me. But so there's that, and there's also the ET frequency wars, or is that, or are they two separate things, or is it all just one
They're one and
frequency?
the same. So the level that you can perceive right now is the governmental level. You can see it playing out at the human level. The multidimensional level is harder for you to perceive because you can't even wrap your brain around, most of you, ETs showing up. How can they be interacting with you? But to them, you are slaves in a way. You are their property. They feed off of your energy, specifically fear, and you feed them power in essence. But it doesn't really matter in the grander scheme of things because we know it'll freak some people out. It doesn't really matter. Think about it just in terms at the human to human level. As you deal with accessing more of your power at the human to human level, you also begin to take more power interdimensionally. Whatever you play out human to human, you play out interdimensionally as well. So whether you just simply keep your eye on this level of it to say, I'm standing in my power, I'm standing in my truth. These are the things I want to build and see moving forward. As you're doing that, the old system begins to crumble because you take your energy out of it. And that's what they don't want you to know you have the ability to do. Whether you're looking at it at your politicians, your governments, or whether you're looking at it from a higher level with ETs, they also don't want that to happen. There are bloodlines, there are families who know that they are part of this ET connection, and they're the ones that, for the most part, are in power and controlling and manipulating things. That information has been transferred from generation to generation. They understand how reality is manifest. They understand a lot of these higher dimensional concepts. And so they want to stay in power. They want to keep amassing power. And so they keep it in the bloodline. It's a
Is that
very tight knit group.
is that like the secret societies or that seem to be running the show behind the scenes? I was never into conspiracy theories, but now I'm getting a little bit more into it. But people ask, is it the Anunnaki, the reptilian race? Is it those kind of?
It's several races. The reptilians are among them. The draconians are there. There are some that are more humanoid, some from the Orion system. So it's varied at this point. But yes, in some ways you could say it's the secret societies, but most in the secret societies don't have a clue what's really going on. They're names of families that you probably never heard of. Those are the true people in power, and the people who are out front, they're just puppets. All right. They think they're in power, but they still have somebody behind them saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. So most of that is happening through blackmail. And this is what you're going to start seeing happening more and more and more in terms of disclosure. When you talk about disclosure, it's not just disclosure in terms of ETs, but it's also disclosure as to all the control and manipulation that's been going on your planet for the better part of 2000 years. It's been a lot longer than that, but they certainly have perfected this method within the last 2000 years.
And do we expect this to start unraveling soon? Is
It
there?
already has. It already has started, and you can start to see it. There are so many of you who are just saying, these governments, look at all the corruption. This isn't working. This isn't supporting the people. It's supporting and lining the pockets of the few. And so you're already questioning a lot of that. You're already wakening up to ask questions, which, 15, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have dreamed that. Some people couldn't even wrap their brain around the fact that somebody in government could be corrupt. It just it just seemed unfathomable, this naivete that was there. And that had to do with the conditioning, the way that you are conditioned. You are socially engineered. And it's not really comfortable for you all to think about that. But when you start going into your heart centered space and you start living from there, you want to work in more organic ways, not in very structured, rigid ways that keep you in this state of fight or flight, in this state of lack, limitation, and separation. All right, it's very different. If you look at a lot of your Aboriginal societies around the world, they're still living in a more connected, fluid, heart-centered space. They're holding that resonance while the rest of you are kind of working within that old system to bust out of it. And they're there to be the reminder for you. Everything has its polar opposite. Absolutely everything. So while you've got the control system on the planet, you've also got some who are holding the freedom system, as it were. They are the mirror for that for you. Just as we were talking about it before, about you holding your light even in the midst of chaos. Some of these groups are doing that very thing for you to say there's another world, there's another way of being. There's a way of being in communion with nature. All right. And even within those systems, there is still some of this psychology with the imbalance within the masculine and the feminine. And that has happened over time as some of the lower frequencies have kind of crept into what overall is a higher vibrational system. But you all are moving into a place where you're finding greater balance. You're utilizing both the masculine and feminine in equal measure. You're learning how to do that. And you're learning how to let go of judgment, to hold a space of compassion. Compassion, as you go through this ascension process, is the gift that you will share with the entire universe. Because you've got genetic material from thousands of worlds and you've got this range of emotions, it also means that you have had experiences, vibrational experiences that have been extremely low and extremely high. And because all of you have had at some level experiences that were vibrationally low, maybe for you it wasn't in a massive way in your life where somebody else had that experience with high drama, you've still had it and you have embodied it. And because of that, you can hold a deeper level of compassion for somebody going through that challenging time than, say, even we can. Because we can hold compassion, but we haven't embodied it in the way that you have. And as you go through this ascension process, you'll be able to hold higher and higher levels and bandwidth of compassion. And that is the gift that humanity shares with the entire universe as you cross the dimensional barrier into the fifth dimensional range.
And is that happening right now or is it coming up? Oh, is there timelines as we kind of, I know time is an
To,
illusion, but
to cross the dimensional barrier,
to really just resonate in the fifth dimension, or I think a lot of people say fifth dimension, but
well, let's talk about that because there may be some people who are confused. What happened to four? So, 3D has very fixed rules and 5D has very fixed rules, and they're very different. So, 3D has the perception of linear time, this idea of separation and extremes and duality. And then the fifth dimensional level, past, present, and future are one. You have a remembrance of yourself as being part of source energy, but you can also have an experience, project your image out there as an individuated consciousness back and forth. 3D is very fixed in that way. You see yourself as being separate. So, in order to go from one dimensional range to another, you had to have a whole dimensional range, which is 4D, which is very malleable. So, at any given moment, as you exist in 4D, you can project 3D rules of the game onto the matrix or 5D rules. You're in 4D right now. You're really not in 3D any longer, but you may be projecting 3D rules still onto the matrix. And then you might have a moment that feels very expanded. You feel very uplifted. You have a greater sense of your connection to all that is. You may, in that moment, be tapping into the 5D perspective and pulsing that out onto the matrix as that is then your reality. But you go back and forth. You have not been able to go up to such a high vibrational level that you can sustain a matching resonance for 5D. You're getting there. All right. This is a game of mastery, maintaining frequency. So you are right now in 4D. You can go as an individual into that level if you so choose. Most of you will wait for the collective. You'll be the mirrors, the way showers, the lighthouse for others who may still be struggling. Doesn't preclude you from having access to that light. And to be honest, there is a part of you that already knows what that is. So to the soul could care less whether you go through ascension or not. It's an ego based desire. So the exact timing, we're not sure. We're watching you. And again, this goes back to the nature of time, and predictions are very difficult because remember what we said, that each of you is stringing together now moments to give yourself the illusion of time. So when we connect with you here, we're on a shared base frequency, but in any given moment, you might choose something that is radically different. And so your version of reality may be different. So we kind of have to look at all of that when we give you predictions. So for one person, that reality may play out. For somebody else, it may not. The way that you kind of experience, for those of you who know what the Mandela effect is, where you have a memory, some of you who are a little older may remember facts a little differently than others, whether it was people who were in movies or Mandela who was in prison and died, or is alive and well. So you were on a now moment where the base frequency was different, and yet you might have moved yourself to one where it's different in this now moment, but you have a remembrance, an echo of that previous one that you were on. All right. Sometimes when you experience deja vu, that's what's happening. You've moved to a now moment where the base frequency is slightly different.
I see. And um, I have just probably like one or two more questions, and then we can just close out. One is people keep asking for disclosure, and but I kind of feel like right now I'm talking to the Pleiadians. That's kind of disclosure
Yes.
in some ways. And how long have, like, for example, the Pleiadians been able to communicate telepathically and have people channel? Is it more of a now thing where more people are able to telepathically connect to different frequencies on easier than before? Or is it something that's always happened? It's always been there. And for example, the Pleiadian collectives have been involved with every generation. Which one, what would you say is more accurate?
It's always been available to you, but most of you chose not to align with it. So, this period, because you're moving through the sector of space with the photonic energy, it's higher, and that makes it easier for you to access it. It took a lot more practice, it took a lot more focus for people when they were experiencing things um, around them at a lower vibrational level. They really had to focus their energy in order to be in that higher vibrational space. Think about it, before that low vibration, it was so loud, you really had to concentrate. And now it's more of a lower din in the background. Now, disclosure itself, for those who are longing for disclosure, why? What does it represent to you? What is your attachment to it? Because your attachment to it will keep you in alignment with the thing you want to most likely avoid. So if you're attached to it because I want to be proved right, because I want this specific thing because it's going to make me feel this way, pay attention to that, because that's where your healing needs to take place in order for you actually to have disclosure. So there's the irony there. Your attachment to disclosure will keep you out of alignment with it. You got to let go of the limiting beliefs that are keeping you in that attachment. Because remember, what you're trying to do is come back into your totality by acknowledging this is a valid option over here, this is a valid option over here. And they're in neutral positions. When sometimes what you all, we're going to have a very long-winded answer to this, so please bear with us. Um, Sometimes when you all go through the process of manifestation, you keep getting what you don't want. You could say, I want this thing over here and I'm doing everything, but I keep getting this thing over here that's low. Sometimes that's because you haven't dealt with the judgment that you're holding. So I want this positive thing over here to avoid this negative consequence. Reality will bring you the negative so that you can see that it's there. So when you allow yourself to say, all right, this negative thing over there, I don't have to avoid it anymore. It's fine, it's valid, it's there. But I don't have to lend my energy to it. I don't have to fear it. It can be in this neutral position. Then you let go of your attachment or aversion to it and you can elevate above it. All right. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Uh,
This is really important. And this is why people say, I'm focused on the positive, but you're focused on the positive to avoid a negative, and you're going to get the negative until you let go of the judgment. So we would have you look at that with disclosure as well. So disclosure is all around you right now. And yes, there are more people channeling because it's soft disclosure. Because if you had an ET standing in front of you right now that looked nothing like you, most of you would be in the fetal position on the ground. It would be too much for your psyche to handle. And it's one thing in theory, it's another when it's part of your physical reality. The other piece to that is that beings of a higher vibrational nature, we don't want to interfere with your soul growth. And sometimes there are things that you still need to work through under this illusion that you're separate from your galactic community. Because once you connect with the galactic community, it radically alters the game. The genie's out of the bottle and it can't go back. It alters your fundamental beliefs of the system. And so some of you still need to operate under that illusion. And it's not quite time, almost there. Most likely next summer, 2026, summer. That may be a more bold disclosure. That may be ET's ships in the sky for the collective to see. Now, right now, when we look at it, we rarely give predictions, but right now, when we look at it, that is the strongest probability. Things will radically change over this year.
People are obsessed with orbs in the sky, and on TikTok, there's so many different videos of orbs. What the heck are those orbs that are in the sky right now? Are they natural phenomenon? Are they aliens? Are they government stuff? What the heck is it?
A little bit of both. It depends on each thing. Sometimes it is your own technology. Sometimes it is just consciousness. Sometimes when you get photos and they're orbs in your personal photos, it's consciousness that you're seeing beings in other dimensional ranges. And sometimes it's a energetic ship, all right, ET ships. So it varies. It really varies. But you can tune into your own heart center and ask yourself, all right, is this earthly terrestrial technology? All right. A lot of Earth technology was garnered from ET downcraft. So they reverse engineered a lot of things. So you do have your own ships. You've got your own fleet of ships. But again, all this is being hidden from you. So information is starting to come out about some of the secrets, some of the things that have been hidden from you. And it will roll out pretty quickly. And it will be a lot for people to take, but you've had some prepping over the last 5 years. A lot happened with COVID and the way that things were handled that forced you to question the things that you were told and the way that your governments operated.
Yeah, it's COVID and TikTok. So for some reason, like the conversations that people were never having is now common conversation. Even the topic of aliens and star seeds and so many things that I can talk about now that couldn't be spoken of before, like somehow TikTok just blew it out of the water. So, and
Well, it also has to do with the amount of data that you're taking in, and that's small chunks of data. You know, we used to tell you, 25 years ago that your 24-hour day would seem to be compressed. You'd feel like your 24-hour day was 12 hours long. What we mean by that is that the amount of data that you would take in 24 hours, you're now taking in 12 hours. This year, more likely six to four. Next year, it's going to be compressed even more. There's more data, more information that you are consuming. And when you do that, it feels like time's compressed.
yes.
All right. The higher you go in frequency, the more time compresses until you finally step out of time altogether and you see that past, present, and future are one.
I'm gonna wrap this up with one big question, and then hopefully you can do a little bit of light language for us to close out. Um, this question keeps coming up, and I forgot to ask it. I got to ask it now. What happens when we die? Like when we die, like where do we go, and how soon do we jump back into a body?
In some ways, it's a linear question, and you're not a linear being. So we're going to give you a linear answer, but we're also going to give you a multidimensional one. So, from the linear perspective, you have kind of a review process where you look at all the things that you experience, the ramifications of all those decisions that you made. You feel the ripple effect because when you cross the dimensional barrier, you once again connect with yourself as being one with all that is. And as one with all that is, you're also on the receiving end of your energy that you pulsed out. So you understand how it made everyone else feel the actions that you took. Some describe this as hell or purgatory because they get caught in the pain cycle of what was generated through their actions. All right. But it doesn't really exist in the way that you think of going to hell or going to heaven. We suppose in some way you could think of it as being heaven, as it were, because the judgments aren't there in the way that you hold them here. And that feels very liberating and freeing and heart centering for you. From the multidimensional perspective, you're already off having the next experience while you're having this one. When you incarnate, you don't have to incarnate in a linear progression. You will choose the frequencies that you want to explore. So maybe you want to explore a particular setup that was in the 1500s, or maybe the next one is 6,000 years in the future. It doesn't matter. You'll go to the vibrational space that holds the energies that you want to explore next. But you're already doing that. It is already the past, it is already the future in this now moment.
We could technically reincarnate in the same exact time, so there's could be multiple versions of us living at the same time, right?
Well, you already are. There's the kicker. So there is part of your consciousness that is having multiple experiences at once.
That's beautiful. If there's any other message that you want to give and anything you want to say that I didn't ask, that you think humanity really needs to hear, and then if you can give us some sort of tell us about light language and wrap it up.
Well, what we want you to know is you're far more powerful than you give yourself credit for. You are seen, you are heard, you are loved on this site. You have a tremendous amount of support. So we just want you to stand in your power, decide how you want to feel in any given moment. What are the thoughts that you want to hold? What are the emotions that you want to emit? What do you want your physical body to feel like? You can say, I am this thing, or I wonder what it would feel like to be this thing. So maybe peaceful. I am peaceful. Or I wonder what it would feel like to be peaceful. And then allow the imagination to go. Doesn't matter. Either one are going to put you in alignment. Sometimes the imagination piece is easier because if you say, I am this thing, you might be able to hold it for 15, 20, 30 seconds, but then the ego might kick in and say, who's she kidding? She's not peaceful. Look at all these things going on. Or no, she's not abundant. Look at this, that, or the other. So sometimes it's easier just to imagine what it would feel like and hold that and emanate that. And then keep checking in throughout your day. Are you still in alignment with that? If not, recenter yourself. Imagine your energy going down to the core of the earth, connecting that light, and then go back to that heart-centered space and allow that energy to pulse out of you. And then as you get to the end of your day, acknowledge the places where that energy showed up. Maybe you were focused on peace, but did you have the ultimate peaceful day? No, you were at work, but maybe you had a moment or two there. Maybe you got to get out at lunch and go sit in the park where it was peaceful and quiet. The rest of the day was in the office a bit more hectic, but have appreciation for that moment of peace that you had in the park. And your appreciation and gratitude will help that energy to build, the acknowledgement of that energy. You're saying to the universe, I like it, I want more. And keep coming back to that frequency again and again and again. All right. So we're going to move into the language of light portion. Now, the language of light is source language. It's comprised of light, sound, sacred geometry, and cosmic information, galactic information, universal information. It's carrier waves of knowledge. And you understand this at the soul level. The ego doesn't understand. It bypasses the language centers of the brain, which is why it is so helpful to you all, because the ego can't get involved. And as you experience it, it's a reminder of frequencies. It's like somebody handing you a manual and how to do something. Or you can think about it like somebody asking you to sing the note of C. If you don't have perfect pitch, it can be very difficult. But if somebody plays the note on the piano, you say, that, yes, no problem. So we're providing you with a reference point for you to reorganize your own energetic field to be in alignment with that energy. Now, typically, we recommend that you work with the language of light 3 times a day for 3 days in a row. That gives you a good amount of time to become accustomed to the energy so you can recognize it as it starts showing up outside of you so that you can step out to engage with that energy. It's not an absolute. You can come back and listen to the recording. You can scrub through the video to this part, or you can imagine connecting with it in your field. As humans, you have a tendency to buy into the things that you experience with the physical senses as being more real than what you might imagine. But in truth, they're the same. All right. So that's really all you need to know. We're going to do an attunement to help you to open up your heart center, to open up to new possibilities and new potentials. All right. Take a deep breath. Ichukuto ora mini bijukata patakata hara mini bijukata patakata bijukati ar mini bijukata patakata ida ar mini bijukata patakata bijukata hasa ainda da ele wiri mini bijukata patakata hasa ala amakor uru imeni bijukata patakata bijukata patakata hasa ar mini bijukata patakata bijukata mini isa kata ar mini bijukata hasana okoturi imahakatiri isa hishono okor uru imahakatore amahakaturi imena isa aka ale ipeta are ibiribijokata betakata abara mboi imbiribijundari jede ikata ar biribijokata betakata hasa dini biribijokata betakata biribijokata biribijokata betakata biribijokata hasa ata. Take a nice deep breath. Isso oto ar biribijokata betakata bada da imboi buji menameira ar uri za biribijokata betakata mene bare ibiribijokata betakata biribijokati inda da ar biribijokata betakata biribijokata biribijokata tar biribijokata betakata biribijokata hasa akatai ibrei. Take another nice deep breath. And when you're ready, you can bring your presence back to the room. So, dear ones, we will go ahead and we will leave you here, but know that you can connect with us directly. You don't need Wendy, just ground, connect with Mother Earth, heart center yourself, ask your question, and listen. So, until then, we are around, we're watching, we're waiting, and we're sending many, many well wishes.
Thank you so much. That was
My pleasure.
that was such an amazing interview experience. I think we kind of touched on a lot of different topics. I want to thank you so much for giving your time to help everyone out there. I know that the right people will watch this at the right time and get exactly what they need to get out of it. You are an angel, literally. That's about it. And for everyone else, please look in the description below and go to Wendy's site. She has these amazing sessions where and they're really inexpensive the first time. I mean, I love how accessible you make it. And then she also has the classes. I think that the world is much better with Wendy in it, and there's so much you can gain from just going to her website. We have so much on there.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. Happy you were so beautiful. You have such lovely energy for that. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you. And thank you for my viewers. Thank you, everyone. Make sure you subscribe, check everything out, and have a beautiful day.